Welcome back, everyone. In the last couple of tutorials, we've learned some fundamental techniques of web automation and scraping using VBA, focusing mainly on class names to grab the data we need. In this video, we are going to build on those basics and introduce a new method of data extraction, finding elements by ID. Identifiers are unique, making them reliable anchors when navigating a document, and leveraging them can make our code more precise and robust. In this tutorial, we will explore a range of data extraction techniques using an Amazon product page as our example. We'll start by learning how to extract data by ID, and subsequently advance our understanding of acquiring elements by class name. Furthermore, we'll experiment with two additional data retrieval methods, namely inner HTML and outer HTML, to broaden our understanding of the various ways to interact with web elements. To conclude, we'll delve into how to loop through elements within a class to systematically extract information from a list of items. We will be using a simple but effective piece of code to demonstrate these techniques. But before we begin, it's important to note that our use of Amazon in this tutorial is strictly for educational purposes. Please be aware of and respect Amazon's policies on data scraping and use web scraping responsibly. We do not endorse or encourage scraping Amazon or any other websites in violation of their terms of service. So, let's dive in and get started. Great! Now before we delve into the coding part, let's take a look at what we have here on sheet 2. In cell A2, I have placed a random Amazon URL. We will be using this random URL to scrape various product details. In the first row, we have headers indicating the type of details we are aiming to extract: URL, title, price, availability, and other data. These are labeled in cells A1 to E1 respectively, and the scraped data will populate in the corresponding columns under each header. Now let's switch our focus back to the VBA editor. But before we go any further, remember to enable the Microsoft Internet Controls and Microsoft HTML Object Library references from the Tools menu in the VBA editor. This will ensure that we have all the libraries we need to interact with Internet Explorer and manipulate HTML elements. As you can see, we have our initial setup ready. We've declared IE as an object to interact with Internet Explorer and doc as another object to interact with the web page. Next, we initiate an instance of Internet Explorer and make it visible, so we can watch the actions being executed in real time. We then navigate to the URL located in cell A2 of sheet 2. The do-while loop here is vital, as it makes sure our code waits until the page is fully loaded before moving to the next line to avoid any potential errors. We then set our doc object to represent the document of the web page we have opened, using setDoc equals IE.document. Alright, to begin our scraping, we've incorporated a line of code to perform a single interaction with the web page. Here, we're targeting an element with the ID, product title. The structure of this line of code is quite straightforward. We are using doc, our web page object, and utilizing the method .getElement by ID to precisely access the element with this specific ID. Once accessed, inner text is used to grab the text content of this element. This ID is unique and corresponds to the product title on the Amazon page. After grabbing the text, we are placing it into cell B2 of our Excel sheet. Now let me show you how you can find the product title ID on an Amazon product page. Now let's put our code to the test. I'm going to place a stop right before IE.quit. This way, we can run the code and it will halt execution at this point, keeping the Internet Explorer instance open. This technique is particularly useful for debugging and, in our case, for progressively building our code. So, let's run our macro now. As you can see, the Internet Explorer instance has opened, navigated to the Amazon page of the product URL we provided, and our code has successfully pulled the product title from the web page and populated it into cell B2 of our Excel sheet. Great, let's continue. Since we have placed a stop before IE.quit, our Internet Explorer instance is still open, and we can continue to add more lines to our code to extract additional pieces of information. This way, we don't have to run the entire code from the beginning each time we add a new line. Alright, moving forward, we are going to extract another piece of information, this time, the price of the product. If you follow along on the Amazon product page's HTML, you'll notice an element with the class name A off screen, which houses the price information we are interested in extracting. To achieve this, I am adding a new line of code. This line is somewhat similar to the one we used to get the product title, but with a notable difference. Instead of getting an element by its ID, we are getting an element by its class name. Take note of how we use getElements by class name with an S in elements, unlike getElement by ID used earlier. This is because class names are not unique, and an HTML document can have multiple elements with the same class name, thus returning a collection of elements. In this line of code, we are targeting the class name A off screen, and we are selecting the first element of the collection of elements with this class name. That's what the 0 in parenthesis denotes. So, keep a close eye on cell C2 as we execute this line of code, and you'll see it pull the price information from the Amazon page and populate it in our Excel sheet. Perfect. Having successfully retrieved the price, let's press on and gather more data. This time, we are after the availability status of the product. It's always useful to know whether the product is in stock, if there are any availability issues, or, as in this case, if there are longer than usual shipping times for this item. Let's now find the unique identifier for this element. And here it is, very conveniently named availability. So, let's add another interaction with the Amazon product page and target the element with the ID availability. To integrate this into our code, we'll add the following line. Remember, using getElement by ID, we are aiming at a unique identifier, expecting to retrieve a singular element from the web page, given that each ID should be unique within a page. Now let's proceed and run this line. Watch closely as the availability status of the product will populate into cell D2 of our Excel sheet right after we execute this line. It's fascinating to see our Excel sheet slowly but surely getting enriched with varied product details, one step at a time. Stick with me, we have more insightful interactions coming up. But before we continue to add more interactions to extract even more details about the product, let me quickly direct your attention to two different methods of interacting with web page elements. When you're developing your own applications, you may encounter scenarios where you need to extract more information from a page's HTML than just the inner text. There might be instances where the information you are seeking is not readily available as inner text, but is embedded within the HTML. The first of these methods is .innerHTML. This method will allow you to access the HTML content nested within a particular element on the web page. It is especially handy when the information you are after is embedded within the HTML tags rather than plainly available as text. Alright, let's run this line and see how the HTML content of the element gets populated in our Excel sheet. Great! As you can observe, cell D2 is now housing the HTML content from the availability element. It's a bit more information than just the inner text. We can see the tags and attributes that shape the appearance and structure of the content on the web page. Now let's push it a notch further with another method, .outerHTML. This method goes a step beyond .innerHTML by fetching not just the nested HTML content, but also the HTML of the element itself. Let's now run this modified line of code and observe how the whole HTML structure of the availability element seamlessly lands into our worksheet. Great! As you can see, integrating this line into our code has enabled VBA to pull the entire HTML structure of the availability element, including the element's tags, and place it into cell D2 on our Excel sheet. With the .outerHTML method, we have plunged deeper into the web page's structure, extracting the full HTML of the element. This method, combined with .innerHTML, arms you with the flexibility to tailor your data extraction approach according to the specific needs of your project. Now, having explored the additional methods to extract information, let's circle back and continue adding more interactions with our web page. We're delving deeper this time, capturing extensive details about the product. We will use a loop to interact with elements classified as a list item. This class name holds the product description, along with other miscellaneous yet valuable information. So here's the snippet we are going to employ. In this snippet of code, we are employing a quick for a equals 0 to 50 loop to traverse through the elements with the class name a list item. This will allow us to interact with each of these elements in sequence, harnessing a wealth of information available under this class. By the way, if you find yourself a bit puzzled with the concept of loops or would like to have a refresher, don't hesitate to watch our tutorial video number 8 on how to use loops in VBA. Alright, before we move forward, let's swiftly add a couple of error handling lines. These will be especially helpful if our loop count, which is set to 50, exceeds the actual number of elements accessed by the class name a list item. So we will add onErrorResume next before the loop to essentially tell VBA to ignore any errors and keep moving. And then onError go to 0 after the loop to reset error handling back to its default state. Great, now that we have our error handling in place, I'm going to place a stop on next A. This will allow you to observe closely the variety of information being pulled into cell E2 as I run through the loop one iteration at a time. You'll be able to see how, besides the product description, several other pieces of information are also being extracted. If, for instance, we are interested in a specific piece of information, like the first paragraph of the description, we can note at which iteration this information is extracted. We would then remove the loop and replace the variable a in parentheses with the specific iteration number where that piece of information is located. This modification will ensure that only the desired information is extracted and populated into our Excel sheet. Okay, now that we've understood how to isolate specific pieces of information by identifying the iteration number, let's continue running our loop. Keep a close eye on cell G2 as we step through the remaining iterations. You'll notice the varied information being extracted each time we progress through the loop. This will give you a clearer picture of the depth and range of data accessible to you through this method. Alright, we've accomplished quite a bit in this session. We've delved into the elements of a web page, extracting valuable information and adding it directly to our Excel sheet. We navigated through different methods to interact with the HTML, giving us a varied approach depending on our needs. Let's have a quick recap. We learned how to extract information using unique IDs and class names. We explored different methods to pull data, such as inner text, inner HTML, and outer HTML. We implemented a loop to extract multiple pieces of information using a single class name. And we applied error handling technique to ensure the smooth running of our code. Remember, the objective of this tutorial was strictly educational, to give insight into the possibilities with VBA for web scraping. It's crucial that we respect the terms of service of the websites we interact with, particularly Amazon in this instance. I urge you all to use the knowledge shared in this video responsibly and ethically, and always adhere to the legal guidelines and policies of any website you are dealing with. Thank you for watching. I hope this video has been enlightening and encourages you to explore more about web automation using VBA. If you have any questions or face any issues, feel free to drop a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this tutorial helpful, and I hope to see you in the next video.